Welcome everybody. My name is Debbie Lehman. I'm normally the children's librarian, but today I'm wearing my program committee hat. We work awfully hard to bring different programs, to interest different people, bring new people into the library. We've been working on this program since last fall. Was it last fall or last summer? Long time.
Yeah,
long time.
Close to a year.
Long time. But Susan is our chair. She does all the scheduling and still has all her hair. She hasn't done it. She is going to be filming this. If you have a friend that missed the program and wishes they could have seen it, it's going to be on our website. She said we have 50 or 60 of our programs filmed that you can see through our website. Our next program, we're going to be showing, can I tell? We're going to be showing Lincoln. They have rules about how we can advertise our movies. We'll be showing Lincoln Saturday at 1 o'clock. Our favorite poet, M.L. Liebler, and the Coyote Monk Poetry Band will be here on the 22nd. He's going to be doing a workshop, a poetry and songwriting workshop at 3:30 on the 22nd. You do have to sign up for that, but the sign-up sheets are back there. And then he's doing a concert at 7. If you've never seen ML, he is a force. You really need to see him. And he's one of our favorites. And the Sioux Paper Crafters are meeting here Thursday the 30th from 6 to 8 o'clock. Those are our commercials for our program. We have two guys here. Here's the author, here's the protagonist. This is Randy and Gordon. And so they're going to talk about one of the books that Gordon wrote. That's over there, A Full Circle, that you see he has a number there. I hope that you enjoy this. I enjoyed the book so much I read it twice.
And, yeah, after the program, the poet will be their second favorite.
Well, I think of it, I left some business cards over there. We just got a high-speed internet at my place, and if you've got some comments on the program, or if you happen to purchase a book, we're always glad to hear from you. So just send me an email message. Doesn't have to be fancy, but it's good to get a little feedback from our program. So, as she said, I'm Gordon Galloway. I started actually, I was thinking tonight, it's been 20 years since I started working on my first book. I had a profession where I had a lot of time that could be considered wasted, so I decided I'd put it to good use. And all of my books, with the exception of one I edited, all the books are true stories about Michigan people. I think they're very special people, but in the end, they're just like your neighbors. Everybody's got a story. And most of the time the story doesn't get told. So I could look back and say I told a lot of good, true stories, and it has changed a few lives, you know, that their story's been out there and so forth. And when Randy's done, I'll take 3 minutes just to go over and tell you what the books are basically about, and if you've got some interest in any of them, we'd be more than happy to sell you one and autograph it and so forth. So anyway, fortunately tonight you don't have to have an author up here telling you about his books, because I've got the star of the show here. Randy Park was a general ed and special ed teacher in the Big Rapids area. He was a football coach at all levels of football. Ended up in the varsity for 6 or 7 years, for about 28 years. And then due to a little mishap back when he was 21, he's been an amputee for 33 years now or something like that. So, and that little incident way back when he was 21 has kind of changed his life a little bit, but that's his story, and I'm going to turn it over to Randy Park.
All right. If you have any questions while we're going through, please just ask. And again, if you want to get up and get something to drink or eat, please do that. We're going to start out here. This is actually a picture of Gordon when he was interviewing my father. He's 85. At this point in time, he was 82 years old and still sawing all the lumber for the family business. Dad learned to saw lumber in the Seabees, World War II at the end of it, and became a profession, went in as a farmer and came out as a sawmill operator. In 1968, we moved back onto the property. Dad started his own mill. I have 2 older brothers and 1 younger, so of course he had help all ready to go. So we've done logging and lumbering since '68. My older brother Cal and my nephew Jamie still run the operation. It's just outside of Big Rapids, so that's been going on for a long time. Let's see. We moved around the state quite a bit with Dad's job, so we moved 6 times in 7 years. So I was always the new kid. There's a few stories early on in the book about that make it kind of interesting. You want to hit the next slide there, and we'll see what we've got. We'll see how good he is with the computer. Yeah. Oh, I knew it.
Randy's there.
Yeah. That's going backwards. You gotta move over the other way. Yeah, like I can help him. I got no clue what's going on. Well, he's getting to the next slide there. I'll talk a little bit about. Oh, there we go. All right. I actually had hair back then. I don't know if you can see that, but I had quite a bit of it. And I was 14 years old, 15 when this picture was taken. And this machine is one that we were logging just outside of Big Rapids, and it was a huge ravine. And at 14, you're still kind of learning, even though I had done it for a couple of years. And skidding out some tree-length logs, some real long ones. And as I'm going across the top of the bowl, they actually caught between 2 trees, and it started to tip up. And I thought, well, if I release the winch, I'll be okay. A little too late. This machine rolled over 2.5 times, landed upside down in the bottom of the ravine. And I'm kind of holding on going, I guess I survived that. So I go out and get my brother. It was just him and I. So he was 17. What'd you do? I said, well, come on back. Let me show you. So we went back, and I thought, how's he going to get that out of here? I knew I had no ideas because you couldn't get any other machinery back there that we had. So he took a look at it. So I can take the cable, go in under that machine upside down, hook it to a tree high, started it up upside down, kicked the winch in, flipped it back over upright, and then told me, go carry the diesel and oil in and don't do that again. I said, okay. So of course, it's a very dangerous industry. Last I knew, it was considered the 3rd most dangerous. Fishing up in Alaska, number 1, if I remember the order, and 2nd was transporting dangerous chemicals. Logging's number 3 for death and injury. So we had a few close calls over the years. What do we got next? Sure. We'll see if he finds it. Oh, he did. All right. 21 years old, was riding my motorcycle north of town, and was coming into town, came up over a knoll, and a car backed out of its driveway. And instead of backing into one lane, was crossways of the road. So I had just enough time to hit the brake. The bike went under the automobile, broke the leg. It was a Pinto hatchback, the ones that were catching on fire back in the 70s. This one didn't. Popped the hatchback open. The bike went one way, the car went the other, and it actually catapulted me through the hatchback. I've still got glass in my arm, some here in the face. It was about 100 stitches of plastic surgery eventually to put the face back together. Got a quick story on that. I see the picture with the dogs back there. And in the emergency room, let me back up just a little bit. So I'm across the road. It actually catapulted me across the road, woven wire fence, my legs up in the fence. And initially I'm thinking, well, geez, maybe I'll walk away from this, Well, then all the sensations start coming in. You start to feel what's going on. As I went to try and pull my leg back out of the fence, saw the boot drop over the other side. Of course, got my foot in it. And it's just held by the muscle, and the 2 bones were sticking out through the pant leg. And that's when I realized, probably not going anywhere. First guy there, and because we're going to see how good she is at following me here. Come on, catch up if you can.
I'm going to tell you, stand still.
I know. And so again, when I went through the hatchback, I put my arm up, and that's what shattered the glass, put it here in my face. I had a helmet and face shield on. Ended up being over 100 stitches plastic surgery. Well, right away, the face is just instant blood. I couldn't see anything. Got the helmet off, and gentleman comes up. He goes, look, buddy, I'm a deputy. He says, ambulance on the way, you're okay. can't see because of all the blood, and grabbing my leg, oh, golly darn, it's hurting. I'm sure that's what I said. And he says a couple more words, and I said, BJ, is that you? He said, yes. Who are you? One of my best friends from summer football. We played football together for 3 years. Great friend. He didn't recognize me. No, you know what you think of then. What do I look like?
And his hand was shaking, right?
Oh yeah, and his hand is going like this. I'm thinking, oh my goodness, what is going on? They get me to the hospital, and the plastic surgeon, we're waiting for surgery to fix the leg, and a little bit of a comedian, but he said, well, I'm going to start working on you. So I was cut under here, sliced up all over. He starts pulling my chin out and kind of clipping it off and throwing it away. He goes, now he said, there's especially women out there pay me big money as a plastic surgeon to do this facelift for them. You're getting it for free. He says, it'd really help if I had a picture of you to go by. He says, you are cut up pretty good. I said, well, my pants, they cut them off me. They're laying right over there. My wallet's in it. Take a look. Well, of course, the police had taken my driver's license out, unbeknownst to me, to make sure they knew who I was and everything. What's the only picture in there? My St. Bernard dog. So I don't know how you think he did. He claimed he did a great job. When I saw that picture back there, it made me think of it. I spent quite a bit of time in a cast. Couldn't walk on it for 9 months. Spent 9 months on crutches, multiple surgeries. What have we got next? This is part of the Michigan Charity Football League. She's still trying to follow me. And I started playing that right out of high school in 1974. The Big Rapids Brewers, that's the team I played for, we actually are the ones that came up with the charter and the idea. We weren't going to be semi-pro, although that was really kind of the level of ball we were playing. Well, the other guys were. I wasn't quite up there yet. But we had about 14 guys from Ferris State playing, and it ended up being 18 teams in the state. And the only requirement was that every gate, any money you took in, had to go to a charity. Nobody made any money off from it. So this was kind of neat. It was an opportunity to continue to play football after high school if you're not going to college. So it was a lot of fun.
Tell them about some of the players, the well-known players you had.
How long did that league last?
Started in the summer of 75. 74, we were just playing an alumni game.
Yeah.
And about 85, just 10 years.
Oh, that's incredible. That many teams.
Yeah, and it started out with just 4 teams. Actually, in 74, we played an alumni game with Reed City, and that's part of what brought it about. We said, look, we're doing all this practicing, playing one game. Can't we do more? Well, not really thinking that through. We got a call from Manistee, and they said, well, we've got a summer team, and we've got the Strawberry Festival, 4th of July. Why don't you come up and play us? Great, we'll do that. So we show up with our 22 Marauders. The custodian that's letting us into the locker room is chuckling, What's so funny? He says, well, is this your whole team? Well, we had a player who had played at Kansas State for 2 years. Great big tackle, offensive tackle. Turned around and looked at him. He says, 22 here? No, these are just the quarterbacks. Straight face, and it was a whole team. They dressed 55, told another 20 not to suit up. We didn't find out till after the game they were in a semi-pro league and have been playing all summer. It was our second game. Ended up 12-2, so we did okay, but boy, they really had us outgunned. And again, it just kind of grew from there. But by the time 1977, there were 18 teams. Like I said, 2 out of Detroit, Cadillac, mostly the southern part of the state.
Who was the one guy that played for the pros on the West Coast? The one year they won the Super Bowl?
Yeah, the Grand Rapids team had this was quite an interesting story. We go down to play them, and they've got an offensive center. And we're looking after the first 2 or 3 plays. Our guys that were playing nose guard were going, hey, somebody else can come in for me. And this guy was about 295 pounds. We'd snap the ball, take out our nose guard, backside linebacker all at once. Played defensive tackle too. Come to find out, he was in the last 4 cut from the San Francisco 49ers that year. He was trying to stay in shape to go try out again the next year. They won the Super Bowl that year. And this guy was a man amongst boys. There were Grand Rapids, Lansing, Detroit, had Michigan State, Michigan ex-players playing for them. So there was some real high quality, And then there were some of us guys that just played high school ball that were just doing it for the fun of it. So you had quite a wide range, but there were some tremendous athletes that played in this. One quick side note on this. Ferris State, we had, like I said, about 12, 15 players that were playing at Ferris at the time. They said, you know what, our freshman team back then, they had freshman football, goes down and plays Jackson Prison. Coach said, if you want to do it, they'll pay you $500 to come down and play. We're going, whoa, great, $500. You know, you're 19 years old, you're really not thinking that
That
through.
was for the whole team.
Yeah, for the whole team. And we're going, well, great, we can go down and play the Prison. And you want to talk about an experience. I know it did for, at least for me, and I know the other guys that went, you really considered not breaking the law in a major way after that. They walk in that prison, and they took us in to an area where we could get changed and all that. And so we asked them, we said, well, you know, this is all new to us. What are we getting into here? They said, well, when you go out where the field is, so here's a full football field inside the prison, baseball diamonds, soccer field, and just this huge yard inside. They said the walls are 125 feet high. It's the largest walled prison in the world at that point in time. As they closed the last gate behind us, they said, oh, by the way, as guards, we don't go down in there. It's too dangerous. We walk the walls, so if there's a problem, we'll fire a warning shot. You better be on the ground. We'd go out on the field. They'd made a human tunnel. It was just like this right here. As you're coming out, they're calling your number out, going, hey, 75, you're not going to get out of here alive. We're going to kill you. And they say that to each guy as he comes out. There had to be a couple hundred of them standing there, so it's not like you were going to say anything back. So we go out, discuss the rules. At that point in time, high school and college had just changed kickoff kicks to blocking above the waist. Pros were still doing it where you could cut them at the ankles. So what rules are we doing? College, okay. Go down on the first kickoff, what do? Cut every one of us out at the ankles. So as the game goes on, now they had told us, they said, look, if they don't abide by the rules, you let us know and we'll take their sports away from them. So of course, I'm just a year out of high school. The guy I ended up across from was another one of these 285-pound monsters. They had nothing to do but lift weights all day. And, you know, you'd get hit, they'd grab your leg and try and twist it on you up under your face mask. It was quite an experience. So I mentioned to him, I mentioned very politely, now you know if you don't play by the rules, they'll take your sports away. And he looked at me, he said, son, I'm in for double life. There's not another thing they can do to me. I said, oh, good point. No more complaints from me. So anyway, it was just a tremendous experience. As the game was over, there were about 5 or 6 of us talking to one of the players. It was just a tremendous athlete, and they had some real good ones. You had mentioned
Ryan LaFleur played baseball there.
Down there played for the Tigers. And so we're talking to this gentleman and said, well, if you don't mind us asking, you know, we're not trying to intrude, but what are you in for? Well, he said it was all circumstantial evidence. I didn't do it. John Norman Collins, Michigan murders that killed the 9 nursing students in the Ypsilanti and Ann Arbor area. That's the guy we're standing there talking to as we're walking off the field and going, okay, gotcha. All right, what do we got next? So that was the summer league. I had my leg amputated in 1980. My accident was in 77, August 12th, 4:15 in the afternoon. Never forget it. And after I had my leg amputated, my younger brother Clay went back. I went back to trying to work in the sawmill logging business. Did that for 5 or 6 years. And of course that's a little tough. If you're trying to walk through the woods or even through the mill, things aren't level. Well, with an artificial leg, if you're not catching that just right, it can really twist things up. My amputation's about 9 inches below the knee. And so this is just a picture of me going back, trying to work the loader, tried to do a few things to help out as I could in the family business.
Did you do any logging or thinning out in the Canadian Lakes area?
Yes. Oh, yes. Yeah, that's
a beautiful place.
Yeah, that's about 6 miles from our sawmill.
Okay.
Yeah, beautiful area out there.
Yeah.
In 1981, I had this great idea. I thought, well, I like playing football, so I actually went back and played in the summer football league for 2 summers, 1980, well actually 80 through 83 for 3 years. I was the only amputee playing. And one quick story there before I get to this photo. We were down outside of Kalamazoo playing a game. Before kickoff, they brought the captains out. Going over the rules, they said, is there anything we should know? And the captains for the Brewers said, well, yeah, we got a guy with one leg playing. The other captains look at him and the refs, they start laughing. Okay, we told you. Sure enough, third play of the game, I'm playing defensive tackle. I make it through the line. I'm looking. Here's a quarterback. I've got him in my sights. Blindside, a halfback caught me, and he caught me right at the ankle. He hit me so hard. I went down. Face mask is in the grass, and I'm picking sod out of there, thinking that was a great hit, So I'm laying on the ground. I look over. The young man's about where you are, and all I see is eyes as big as saucers, and I'm thinking, wow, something must be wrong with him. Well, he's got a hold of my sock, which has got my foot in it. And he's holding it like this, going, I said, oh yeah, that's mine, thank you. I hopped over on one leg, grabbed it, said, appreciate you holding on to that for me, hopped off to the sidelines. Well, I had forgotten to bring a spare bolt. I learned my lesson, I always did after that. So their trainer came over and he said, hey, I see you got a little issue there. I said, oh yeah, just a little one. He said, everything okay? Yeah. I said, but I need a bolt. Told him how long, what size. You know what? He says, one of the guys up here in the stands, his dad's got the local hardware store. So he gets on the PA and says, Joe Smith, come on up to the press. He says, hey, this guy needs, sure. He ran down, got a couple of them for me. They put it back on. I went back out and played the game. So it was kind of later that year at the All-Star game, I played the whole game while this team out of Jackson was in the other division. At the end of the game, we're in the locker room, and of course I've got my leg off, changing my clothes and everything, and this young man walks over, he goes, you. I said, me? What? I didn't know the guy. I thought I killed you earlier this year. I stand, there's your leg sitting there, he says, and you come over and take it? Okay, I guess I get that, 1981, I had the great idea of, I'm an amputee, I love playing contact football, I'm gonna put a team together. So, started contacting hospitals, prosthetic shops, any way I could connect with, of course, no internet back then, not to the extent it is now, and put together gentlemen from, at the time, 3 different states, so we called it the Tri-State Amps. Ended up 4 different states, had 18 players, leg amputees, arm amputees, and we played, this was the first game, August, up at Top Taggart Field at Fair State University. We played a team from the Michigan Charity Football League, so they had no amputees on it. And, I always had people ask me, well, what was the final score? I said, final score was 12-12. They said, well, were you guys really that good? I said, no, they were a whole lot better than we were, because we didn't never all practice together. You got guys coming from 4 states, hard to get them all together at once. And the team from the Michigan Charity Football League was an all-star team, so it was guys that had been playing the whole year. They said, well, was it really that close? And we got it on film, of course. They said, well, notice a couple of times they batted balls down they probably could have intercepted. I said, well, they weren't being nice. Well, why'd they do that? I said, I called their team over before the game started. And I said, now, look, guys, I know all of you. I played in the league with you. My estimation, you're a 2 to 3 touchdown favorite in this game. You're that much better than we are. I know it. My team knows it. You know it. But I got to tell you something. If you get up by more than 1 touchdown, I'm going to call a timeout. Well, yeah, Randy, so what? I said, we're going to go over. Every one of the arm amputees are going to put their hooks back on to finish the game to even things out. So you think about that before you score too many touchdowns on us. Ended up a 12-12 tie. It was really a good game. We had a lot of fun. So.
You ran the amputee league for how many years?
3 years. And again, all the gates went to charities. This first one, and you hear some really sad stories about some of the amputees. 14-year-old young boy from Lansing, Michigan, went in at 11 years old to have his tonsils out. Now, think about this as parents or aunts, uncles. 11 years old, you take your son in to get his tonsils out. Comes out of surgery and was given an antibiotic shot in the hip, hit his sciatic nerve. The leg gangrene set in. They had to take him back in, amputate his foot a few days later. Now, you take your son in to have his tonsils out and he loses his leg. Well, the parents I got talking to, of course, this was 3 years later. And they said the first thing that, we're going, oh my goodness, our son lost his leg. We don't know what's going on. The hospital sends their administrators and lawyers out, just a terrible accident, couldn't have been helped. Here's X amount of dollars, just sign this paper. And they said, we're totally confused, don't know what to do. Well, it sounded like a decent amount of money, so they signed, not realizing at his age, about every 4 to 6 months, he was actually growing out of his artificial leg and he had to have a new one. Well, at that point in time, they were anywhere from $5,000 to $8,000 each. And of course, they had no money. And again, the parents hadn't done anything wrong, just didn't know, didn't take the time to say, I think we'll check with somebody. You're grieving, here's your kid going, Mom, Dad, my leg's gone, what's going on, So we played the first game for him, helped with buying a new artificial leg. So again, if you have questions, please ask. This is the Amp game. That's me catching the football just before that guy really hit me hard. All right, what do we got? Oh, by far my favorite pitcher. As you can see, he's a double arm amputee, and of all things, John is my neighbor. My wife and I have 3 acres that she had bought from him years ago. So you end up being neighbors, just kind of a funny thing. But get talking to John, and I've gotten to know him real well over the years. And I said, John, I want to know what happened to your arm. Okay, Randy. So we sat down. He worked for a power company. It was in the winter. He's up on a pole. He's taken down one line, and he said it was disconnected. I knew it was dead. No issues with it. Well, he unbolted it from the pole, and the wire was still frozen to the pole. So he said, Randy, I'm not thinking. I just want to get off this pole, get to the next one, do my job. So he said, I grabbed a hold of the wire and broke it loose. It was under pressure to the next pole. It pulled that wire, pulled it up, hit 2 live wires, and put 30,000 volts through both arms. He's got these scars right under his shoulder blades out the back. He said, I'm just instant pain, screaming. He said, they got me down off the pole, got me in an ambulance. I love it. Of course, this was early 70s. I love telling this story to high school kids because, they put him in the ambulance, took him to Big Rapids Hospital, said there's nothing we can do, and took him by ambulance to the Ann Arbor burn unit. I get these hands, Mr. Park, why didn't they Aeromed him down? No Aeromed back then, guys. And when I tell them my story, I said we took old 131 all the way down to just north of Grand Rapids when they transported me. Why didn't you take the freeway? There wasn't a freeway, people. We remember, but they don't. They assume everything was like that. Well, he said they got him down there. He said the entire time I'm just begging. He said they were shooting me up with morphine. Nothing was touching this pain. He said it just felt like my arms were right in boiling oil. Got down, put him out, amputated both arms, and they said the electrical current was so strong it had actually dried the blood in both arms. There was no fluid in his arms. And of course they were all scarred and burned, so they took him off. He's got his own construction company, drives backhoe, semi, you name it, John does it all. What's kind of cute about this was the game in 1981. He'd never played football before in his life, and I talked him into it being a good neighbor. He told me afterwards, if I'd known what I was getting into, you wouldn't have got me out there, but glad I did it. The game's over. Well, he's got his hooks off, and we've got his stumps taped, and he comes running over. He goes, Randy, get my gear off me. He can't get his helmet off, let alone jersey, shoulder pads. I get that off, get the tape cut off. I get one hook on, then he gets the other one on. Reaches under the bleachers, so we're still at Ferris's Top Taggart Field, there's still a lot of people in the stadium and everything. Reaches under, gets in his cooler and gets his Diet Coke and his cigarette. And I said, John, what are you doing? He goes, what are they going to do to me, Randy? He says, this was something, quite an experience. But one other quick story on John. He's a great guy. He lives just outside this it's called Hawkins. All it is a bar, restaurant, and a gas station. That's all Hawkins is. Well, what they're famous for is they have a horse pulling contest once a year, and people come in from all over the state, bring their teams, and pull. It's a big deal, a few hundred people there all the time. Well, the bar and restaurant, this is the middle of the day, the owner's standing there, and in comes about a dozen children from about 4 to 8 years old. The boys all go in the boys' men's bathroom, the girls all go in the girls'. And they're in there, and they're in there, and they're in there. And the owner's thinking, Okay, a dozen kids in the bathroom. Something's going on. You know, I probably better go check on them. And John comes in. She says, John, these kids just went in the bathroom. They've been in there for like 10 minutes. He goes, it's probably my fault. Your fault. John, what'd you do? Well, he says, you know, it's been so many years. Sometimes I get a little tired of telling my story when people ask, hey, buddy, how'd you lose your hands, you know? So he said, the kids all came up, hey, mister, you know you got no hands. He goes, yeah, I know. Well, what happened? He says, well, I got to tell you, kids. He said, when I was your age, I never washed my hands and they fell off. They were all in there scrubbing up, making sure their hands were clean. He did tell them the truth afterwards, but it was kind of comical, you know. 1986, I had decided probably logging and lumbering was a little too tough on my physical health, so I went back to school and got a degree in social studies and special education. This is actually a hearing impaired student I had, an interpreter working with her, and a couple of special needs stories. In the book, there's probably 8, 10, maybe 12.
Some real
Yeah.
funny ones and some real tearjerkers.
Yeah, we hear people, they'll say, look, one minute I'm laughing, the next one I'm bawling my eyes out. So just to give you kind of just a snapshot of some of the stories. One had a young man who was, trying to think of all the impairments he had, hearing impaired. He had a couple of big hearing aids. Now when he had those in, he was probably 50 to 60% hearing. With them out, nothing. He had a learning disability and a fairly severe emotional problem. When he was 7 years old, he walked out in the barn and his father had committed suicide and had hung himself. He grabs his feet, of course too little to do anything, a farm out in the middle of nowhere, so he watches his father die. You can imagine what that does emotionally to a young man. And he was about 5'4" or 5", 130 pounds. Really struggling in school, having some difficulties. And I was the head football coach, varsity. And so I talked to him one day and I said, hey, Billy, what do you think about playing football? Well, yeah, I think I'd like that, Mr. Park. We always tried to take the students, and if we could get them involved, no matter what it was, basketball, baseball, I don't care, try and get them involved. Well, he'd never played before, 140 pounds. Can't hear without his hearing aids in. So, of course, my assistant coaches are going, oh, nice one, Randy. Now, where do we put him? I said, well, there's only one possibility, nose guard. He's 140 pounds. I said, look, let's just give it a whirl. Because with those out, he couldn't hear the count, what was going on. He had to go all on movement. And in the huddle, he could read lips enough. I always told the linebacker, look right at him, make sure he's got the play. Well, his junior year, he got in some, was learning the game real quick, and just a tough farm kid, Again, 140 pounds, nothing to him. We ended up with an open date, and our athletic director thought it was a good idea to fill that date for the next year when he was a senior. Dowagiac happened to be the state champs the year before, and it only graduated a handful of kids. They had a 260-pound fullback that got the ball all the time. We had Billy working as our starting nose guard. He'd actually earned it. It wasn't anything we gave him. He was getting that good. We always told him, stay low, because you stand up, you're way too small. You're going to get knocked aside. We go down to their place and have to play him. Well, we knew what they were going to do. They're looking at a 140-pound nose guard. They're just going to give their big fullback the ball a lot. Sure enough. Talked to Billy before the game. I said, you know what's going to happen? I know that big guy's getting the ball. I said, what's your job? Take him down. I said, okay, how are you going to tackle him? Mr. Park, I'm going to grab his ankles, wrap him up, hold on for dear life. Good, perfect. I had a great defensive line coach. He's actually best man at my wedding, good friend of mine, a Vietnam vet. He worked with him over the summer. It was the opening game. We go down there. Sure enough, play after play after play. They're giving that big guy, 260 pounds, right at our little guy. He would grab, the most that guy got was maybe a yard forward or two, because he could fall that far. He was 6'2", 260. And the game just went like that. I don't think he ever got more than 5 or 6 yards a couple of times. The rest of them were 1 yard, they'd end up punting. Very end of the game, he makes 2 more tackles. The game's over. We won. Nobody gave us a chance. We weren't that good that year. So, of course, Billy comes over after. He is just flying high. I told you I could do that, Coach Park. I said, I know you could. I believed you. That's why you're there. You earned it. He goes in, team's done, we're on the bus, and I look, and here comes the other team's coach across the field to our bus. I thought, oh, what do my kids do? You never see the other coach coming over afterwards. Knocks on the door, I get off, said, yeah, Coach, what can I help you with? He says, I got to talk to that little nose guard of yours. I said, really? He goes, oh, we had you on film and went, that's what we're going to do. He said, he killed us. We couldn't stop him. I got to congratulate him. Got him off the bus. He's got his hearing aids in now. The coach congratulated him. I mean, I'd never seen that by another coach before. And, of course, didn't know that Billy had all these issues, just, wow, he did a fantastic job. So, this is kind of one of those great stories. He did graduate. Doesn't end real well. About 6 years after he graduated, I got a call from the family that he'd been living with. And they said, yeah, we just got a call from Detroit where he was living. His wife filed for divorce, left him. Police came to the house. He had a gun, committed suicide. And, I just, like I said, there's a few of those in there. But then I got to tell you kind of what I think is a kind of a neat story. We had a young man who had oxygen deprivation at birth, and it had damaged certain sections of the brain, others were fine. Well, with Tim, if you were going to ask him a question, you literally had to give him 30 to 45 seconds to respond. It was that processing problem. Now, learning disabled students have it, but he had it because that part of the brain was damaged. He had trouble retrieving the information. Now, you give him the 30 seconds. Now, that doesn't sound like much. Think about it, though. You ask somebody a question, you're kind of trying to answer it for him half the time. Well, if you gave him the time, he gave you the answer and usually was pretty well right on. And the damage of what was really unique with him that I discovered anyway, I didn't discover it, but it was in his file, is spelling. He was at a collegiate level spelling. So he could spell any word, and it was right. And I'm a terrible speller. In the classroom, I don't know how many times, because learning disabled students, a lot of them really struggle with trying to remember how to spell things. And of course, we have silent vowels, all this other stuff going on that really messes them up, when they're trying to remember. So they asked, Mr. Park, how do you spell this? I said, I don't know. What do you mean you're a teacher? I said, no, I really don't know. What do you do? Well, I either have to look at the dictionary. I said, what other option do we have? Oh, Timmy, he knows. So they go over and ask him, he'd spell it for him, it'd be right. Comprehension was at a kindergarten level. He couldn't tell you what it meant. He could spell anything. Well, he also had a little bit, his gait was a little bit off because of, again, part of the brain that was damaged from this oxygen deprivation at birth. So he had a little bit of gait. What we believe happened is his father was in the military and they moved around a lot. Some well-meaning special education teacher, and I could see myself doing the same thing, he would have trouble processing, sometimes getting from one classroom to the other. So apparently they told him, think of it like driving a car to get from this class down the hall to the other class. Well, he had to have a padlock on his locker because his fine motor skills were so bad he couldn't do a combination lock. He would pull his key out. Now think about this, a 9th grader in high school. Start his car, make all the noises, vroom, vroom, vroom. Go down the hall, steering his car. He'd get to a turn in the hallway, use his blinker. Well, you can imagine, you talk about teasing in a school, you can imagine what happened. It took us 6 months to get that to a stop. When we did, actually, a couple of the boys that were doing some of the teasing ended up being some of his best friends. Well, we're into his sophomore year, and his junior and senior year, he was going to go to the local career center or tech center for his last 2 years, half the day. We're thinking, okay, now we've got this stopped here at our school. Everybody knows him. They would actually help him. It really turned into a good thing in our school. We're thinking, we're going to send him where 5 other school districts are coming in here. They don't know him. What's going to happen? So the special education counselor and I are standing outside of my classroom door, and we're discussing this. What are we going to do to get Timmy to stop driving his car? Because if he goes to the tech center and does that, we're going to be dealing with issues every single day. Well, one of the cognitively impaired students that was in my classroom happened to be walking by. He goes, Mr. Park, Mr. Strong, you don't want Timmy driving his car anymore? I said, well, no, he's going to go to the career center. We're afraid he'll get teased. Oh, I can take care of that for you. We'd been working on it for 3 weeks. Our whole staff couldn't come up with how to stop this because he used his key to unlock his locker. He goes, I'll take care of it for you. Okay, give it a whirl, buddy, And again, his average IQ was 100. This young man's IQ was about 70. He was, had some mental stuff. Good buddies with Timmy. Walked over, Timmy was at his locker, closed his locker up, goes, Timmy, give me your key. Gives it to him, walks over, here you go, Mr. Park. I said, what do you mean? Well, if he doesn't have his key, he won't drive his car. I said, are you sure? He said, oh yeah. I says, I know him real well. Okay, I said, Timmy, come here. And take your key, put it in my desk. You come get it when you need to open your locker and then put it right back in my desk. Kid never drove his car again. Here all the experts, we'd been going on for 3 weeks, couldn't come up with a plan. Took a mentally impaired young man to take care of it for us. So there's some really good stories, and like I said, a few that were a little sad. So what do we got next there, Mr. Galloway? This young man was severe attention deficit disorder with a hyperactivity. Really struggling in school. I mean, we were getting contacted by the teachers. Can't keep him in a seat, can't keep him focused. Well, we ran a summer program through Michigan Works where they made minimum wage. Where our football field was, there was a stream and a walking trail. Well, every year, of course, there'd be dead limbs. The stream would have anything from tires to who knows what in it. So we were taking the students in the summer and cleaning this all up. Well, he came to me day one. We'd known each other for a couple of years. He goes, Mr. Park, I can't be with the group doing what you guys are doing. I need to be working. And I said, okay. Got him the handsaw. Walked out. I said, now I'll show you where the school property is. Don't go outside of that. But I said, I want you to show me the difference between live trees and dead. Oh, he knew right away. Here's dead, this dead. Cut it up into firewood lengths. He would leave first thing in the morning, come back at lunch, come back at the end of the day, and one of the best workers I ever had. Just burned that energy off, loved it. Boy, did a great job.
How far along did they come with ADD and all that stuff back then?
Well,
I mean, they knew about it, but...
Right. What they've the experts have discovered, the last research I saw is, in our brain, the synapses, that's where the electrical charge jumps. It's like a spark plug gap, and there's millions of them in our brain. That electric charge goes. Well, what they said they've discovered with attention deficit disorder, with the hyperactivity, they believe that gap is off. So it's like having a spark plug gap that's too wide or too close, and the spark is jumping sideways. And it's actually electrifying other parts of the brain that you're not trying to get to. Now they don't.
Firing, but it's misfiring.
It's misfiring. Now they don't have an answer for it yet, because remember the medications, all that kind of does is mask the symptoms, but it helps them focus a little more. There's an expert out of Grand Rapids, Dr. Birkeland, that came up and spoke a few times, and that's all he deals with, basically. And he talked about the medication, and he said, now, think about it. He said, I'll use an example. He goes, Mr. Park, he said, if you were on this medication, you didn't need it. You could be working on a test or reading something. Someone could come in and slam that door and you wouldn't even notice. It helps anyone focus more. I don't know if you've heard this year in professional football, the Seattle Seahawks had two of the best defensive cornerbacks in the whole league. They called shutdown corners. They would put them on a receiver and say, don't let him catch the ball. Well, they both got accused of using medication like this because it wasn't prescribed to them, they didn't need it. Now, one got off and the other one served his 4 games. But from what Dr. Birkeland was sharing with me, that's what it would do. It would help you focus out, because you didn't need it.
Yeah.
Focus out the crowd, all the other noise, the other players, and I'm just going, you. I'm on you. Wherever you go, I'm going. You're not catching the ball. And they were the 2 top-rated guys in the whole league, and apparently they were using some of this. That was the accusations. They were using it. So they still don't know a lot. Again, the research says that they know what about 80% of the brain does. They only know about how 10% of it actually works.
Yeah.
They know what certain areas do. I don't know how. It's that complicated.
Well, a lot of these drugs, they research them for something else, and they end up using them for maybe something completely different.
Well, and there's a lot of concern too with long-term, with the Ritalin, Adderall, some of these other medications, that they don't physically grow quite as big, and there's worry about bone density. So, there's always a little bit of a trade-off with it. Okay, what else do we have here? Oh, well, that's just me after my last surgery here last September. Yeah, go ahead and flip through these. We don't.
That's when you got your latest one, huh?
Yeah, okay. A couple of them that we flipped through there before last fall. Now, right now there are about 300, there's over 300 different feet, artificial feet you can get. This is kind of just a standard one. It's a carbide fiber foot. And if you'll notice, there's 4 set screws here and here. The purpose for those is there's actually a pyramid in each one. The top one, the 4 screws, you can adjust the socket. So you can tip it frontwards, back, left, right. The bottom one adjusts the foot. Split toe, so that if you step on something uneven, there's a little bit of give there. Well, the issues with a carbide foot is the amount of energy you put into it, you only get about half of that back out of it. So you're putting all this force in, trying to get it to push it back up. The last 2 years, just before I had that last surgery, started having some serious back issues. You saw the injections in the left knee there. I'd had knee surgery and on my good leg, and they said the only thing left to do would be a knee replacement if it kept getting worse. They said the back, we're already seeing damage in the bottom 3 vertebrae. They're starting to wear. You're looking at possible back surgery. And I'm thinking, gotta have something. But again, it was all this force trying to put into this to get enough action back out to be able to walk. Well, a gentleman out of California, businessman who has a doctorate from Harvard and 2 from MIT, biomechanics, electronics, physiology, was mountain climbing, got caught up in the mountains late at night, frostbite, lost both of his legs. Had surgery, healed up, got 2 artificial legs with feet similar to this on it, tried walking and went, this is a bunch of garbage, I can build something better. And he's one of these brains, he's just got all this information in those areas. So he started a company, he had the money to do it, but started working with Bethesda Naval Hospital because of all the veterans coming back from Afghanistan and Iraq. And he said, look, the technology's there. The guy that builds my artificial leg actually told me 15 years ago, he said the technology's there to make a robotic ankle, but there's no profit in it, so the companies aren't even looking into it because there weren't enough amputees. Well, this guy, because he lost both of his legs, said, I want something better. So he developed this company that built what it's called is the iWalk or Biome ankle, and it's actually robotic. And I just picked this up last fall. I'm really going to test her skills there with a camera, aren't I? But what it is, it's got electric motors and computer chips in there. There's a battery pack here that operates it. And it is actually robotic. So what it does when I step, they adjust it with an iPad. It's all done through an iPad. When I step, it collapses, but then it pushes me up. You can hear it. The heel and the toes are robotically controlled, and it does the walking for me. Since I had this ankle, of course, one of the issues, you get talking to the insurance companies, it's $52,000. So they, yeah. But since I've had this, you want to go to the next slide there. Actually, Gordon here has ended up taking me down for, I'm getting injections in my back. I was getting them done every 6 weeks as soon as I could because my back was so bad, starting to deteriorate. I was getting injections in the knee about every 3 to 4 weeks. As soon as they'd give me another one, I'd say, give it to me because I can't stand the pain.
I was forced to watch all the pain he went through.
Oh, yeah. Because he'd have to drive me back.
Me and I took the picture there.
Yeah, if you're having injections in your back, you can't drive home, of course. They won't let you. So this was all going on, and then this ankle became available. And of course, we had to convince the insurance company. So they said, you've got to have an independent evaluation. Well, I had the prosthetist, 2 orthopedic surgeons, a rehabilitation doctor, all saying, no, he needs it. No, independent eval, which $55,000, I guess I kind of understand. You know, that's a lot of money. So they sent me to Grand Rapids, went in to Mary Freebed, walked in, orthopedic surgeon and prosthetist said, oh yeah, we've got 2 guys with that. It's great, works fantastic. At your age and what you're still trying to do athletically and things, perfect for you. We'll have that written up to the insurance company within a couple of days. Well, that kind of put the insurance company in a bind. They picked the place where I was going to go, and the hospital saying, yeah, he needs it. So they had to go along with it. In the long run, it's actually going to save them quite a bit of money because you don't get those injections, you don't get knee injections from orthopedic surgeons without it costing you a lot of money. And then they were both talking, they said, we don't have a choice. You're talking surgery on both knee replacement and major back surgery. And of course, many times you start the back surgery, it doesn't end, you know.
How long you had that?
This ankle,
Yes.
I had surgery in last September. What had happened is I torn the nerve in the back up a little bit. So I believe I picked it up about November. I've had it since. So not quite a year, but it's just made all the difference.
So you can feel the effects?
Well, immediately. What was amazing was, and the guy that builds my artificial leg was, we filmed it. They let me test this leg out, this ankle. I put it on, went out, is it back one picture, the one with the hill? Because,
You're asking for some.
yeah, I want to see how good he really is. And maybe it was a couple back, there it is. A couple of things with this carbide foot, and this is really just a typical leg. It's pretty much what you get today if people don't know about the robotic one, and a lot of places don't because it's so new. Well, you go up a hill, about all I could do was kind of go on my toes. It really didn't look very good at all. Coming down, I'd have to turn sideways. I couldn't walk down because it's so stiff. It
Because
would
your
just
toes are the ones that...
right, and it would just pull on my back and my knee. You know, I couldn't go up and down hill. I put this on. I'd only had that on 3 minutes. Walked up the hill and walked right straight down it. And I'm going, whoa. I hadn't done any jogging in probably 3-4 years. Parking lot back and forth. I thought, no, you're not getting it back. Salesman goes, sorry, you haven't paid for it yet. It's going back. I hadn't had the evaluation yet. And I'm going, oh no. So anyway, the gentleman that builds my leg, he filmed me with this walking. Go ahead and go to the one where he's adjusting it there, Gordon. Let's see really how good you are.
I'll get it moved.
Go forward, back, sideways, up, down, yeah. And filmed it. And I mean, I'm walking normal, jogging, going up and down the hill. Wow. He said, now, Randy, I want to put the old, you know, you got to leave with this one anyway. Let's put it back on. I couldn't walk. I mean, I took a step and it was like having the old pirate leg on, you know, the little stump there. It was like, oh, I said, I can't believe this. I mean, I couldn't walk. It took me 10 minutes to just walk enough to be able to get out to my vehicle and go home. I went, oh, I can't believe this. You know, just really amazing. You know, we've, other things that you're thinking I should hit on? I wanted to talk about the Earl. There's a lot of things in the book we haven't even touched on. Gordon did a fantastic job writing it. We've talked with a gentleman that builds my leg, Jan Stakosa, and you've been there too. And it kind of come down to probably 4 things that make life successful for an amputee. First is the surgery. My first amputation was in Grand Rapids. It was a half an hour. Just before they put me under, I'm looking at the surgical table, and I looked at the orthopedic surgeon. I said, what's that? Well, they already had my IV in, and boom, put me out before it, you know, he's just looking at me. I was out cold. They did the surgery. Well, it was an amputation saw. It was stainless steel, 2 rings, and basically looked like a hacksaw blade. He said, really, other than them being stainless steel so they don't rust and give you infection, kind of what was used in the Civil War to amputate. Half an hour, they had my foot amputated. Sewed up the end, and that's kind of the way things are done in many places. Well, once I got to this gentleman in Lansing to build my leg, because I was getting it done in Grand Rapids before that, he said, look, there are some specialists out there. Well, these Dr. Ertls, their grandfather, now that would take it all the way back, 1920s in Hungary, had developed a procedure that is still in the medical books and used by certain people. It's called the Earl Procedure. Now, typically when a below knee amputation is done, again, they saw through, sew you up. But you've got the bones hanging, so you can't have more than about 10% weight bearing on the end, or the bones will not only spread, they'll start to go through. I've actually talked to some amputees who've had them go through the end of the stump. Well, what the Earl Procedure is, they actually build you a bone bridge and connect those 2 bones. Instead of 10% weight bearing on the end, I've got over 80%. Well, with a 9 inches of stump, That's like taking a lever, you're trying to move a big rock and you're up close. Well, if you can get way out on a pry pole, you've got a lot more leverage, it works better. This, just for reference, actually happens to be a xerography. It was taken to look at the soft tissue. What had happened is I ended up with bone infection, osteomyelitis. It showed up 3 months after the accident. Wasn't amputated, so that was January of '78. Ertles didn't do the surgery until January of '81. So I had that infection the whole time. You could actually look in, see the plate screws. Well, this Dr. Ertl was doing surgery in the 20s and early 30s in Hungary, did the work in his home, put the patients out, and his young sons would assist him. Well, just before the Germans took over, he moved to Chicago, brought the family with him. The boys already knew how to do this. So in the 1980s, when I get hooked up with them, it's the 2 boys. Well, now one has passed away, the other one's retired, but their sons are doing this special surgery. This surgery took almost 6.5 hours. They reconnected blood vessels, the calf muscle. My calf muscle had atrophied to nothing, it was just bone. Within a year and a half, I had about a 2.5, 3-inch calf muscle that they reattached. That helps with blood flow. Connecting the bones, reattaching all the blood vessels gives you that circular motion. Prior to the Ertl surgery, one of the worst things I went through besides surgeries and pain was phantom pains. You hear some amputees talk about, my limb that's gone is killing me. Well, you're intelligent enough, you know, okay, wait a minute, it's not there, it cannot be hurting, but just killing you. I mean, I couldn't stand the pain. Get down to Ertl's and they said, well, we can explain that to you. I go, please do. They showed me some of what they took out were called neuromas. If the nerve is just left hanging and not addressed in surgery, it'll try and grow you a new limb. Well, it actually looked like spaghetti, about 8 strands of spaghetti hanging out, real bright white. And the only way I could describe it would be like having a broken tooth and you put ice cream on it. That's the pain you had with it. Well, they said, look, those nerves over the years, anytime you had something wrong at the end of the nerve, it was your foot. And so it's still sending the message to your brain that your foot's hurting. Once they did the surgery, I've never had a phantom pain since. And it's one of the issues I hear a lot of amputees talking about. So again, the things probably to be that I believe are successful for an amputee to be successful, first you gotta have the proper surgery. My first year before I found Dr. Ertls or Jan Stakos in Lansing, I actually had an orthopedic surgeon and a prosthetist because I was having all kinds of problems. My stump would bleed. I'd try and walk and my sock would be full of blood and I'm just going, hey, this isn't good. Well, Randy, you're an amputee, what do you expect? I'm going, well, I expect better than this, but I don't know. You know, I'm new at this. You guys are the expert. Well, no, you just got to learn to live with it. I go to Jan Stakos, and my mother read an article in Reader's Digest. It was called Super Vet. A Vietnam vet had come back and had all kinds of difficulties with his artificial leg. He'd had the Ertl surgery, went to Lansing, had this Jan Stakos build him a leg for running, and completed the Chicago Marathon for his age group. Was in the top 25%. And so surgery is the first thing, then getting a proper socket fit's the other. One of the new big things right now is they've got a computer that'll actually scan your stump and they build the socket from that. You'd think that's a good idea, but I don't agree with that. What they're trying to do is you really don't have to be a professional then. All you got to do is punch a computer in, it scans it and says, well, here's the volume, that's what you build it for. Well, the problem is with a stump, you've got all these fluids, nerves, muscles. It's not a solid mass, it's not all bone. Those things all shift. I will put on 2 or 3 stump socks during the course of the day just because fluids will move out as I'm walking. And if they use the computer, it's just that overall sock, and it doesn't. I've never heard of anybody having one that says, oh, it fits great. It's really a craft. This guy in Lansing that builds mine, he's been at it since the early 60s, and his father did it before that. It's really looking at it, knowing your patient, making adjustments to the socket, all those things. So you need the proper surgery, the proper fit and socket, and then the proper components like I talked about with the feet. And then the fourth thing is really the attitude. But most amputees start out with a pretty good attitude, but you know, you can get down pretty easy because you're being told by some of these professionals, hey, you're an amputee, learn to live with it. I'm not really discrediting those people. The surgeon I had in Grand Rapids said, Randy, I maybe do one a year. Somebody comes in from an accident, torn up so bad I've got to amputate their limb. I learned in Vietnam, save as much as you can, hope for the best. When I found these specialists in Chicago, he said, that sounds great. I'll get all your medical records. I'll call them. I mean, really a good doctor willing to say, I don't have all the answers on this. That's not my specialty. Try it out. You don't get that a lot with orthopedic surgeons. I mean, a lot of them are, I know the answer. There's some real horror stories out there. So those are kind of the four. But back to the first time I met Jan Stakosa, I'll let Gordon kind of jump in here with a little bit of this. He knows the story. So this was December of 1980. I'd had multiple surgeries. My life was pretty much sitting on the couch, trying to wear the artificial leg. The stump would bleed.
Anyway, Randy goes in with his, it's all in the book. Randy goes in with his mother, and you'd have to know his mother to appreciate it. She's a very strong-willed person. And Jan Stakosa is an extremely serious individual, the guy that builds the prosthesis. And he went in and he's 23 or something like that?
Yes.
And his mother's the one that's doing all the talking, asking the questions. And Jan's, I was there, and he said, I'm wondering what's going on. There's this strapping 23-year-old guy, and his mother's asking all the questions. And then he said, I looked at him, and I looked in his eyes, and I could just see the glaze of painkillers. And I could smell his wound, the infection in his leg. And he says, I can build you a better prosthesis, but I can't now. What do you want to do in life that you can't do now? And what did you say?
First words out of my mouth were, I want to play contact football. Well, of course, prosthesis before any of the orthopedic surgeons, oh, don't even think about that. Totally out of the question. Jan looked me in the eyes and said, I can do that for you. I can build you a leg to play contact football. I said, wait a minute, are you sure? One of the reasons my mother had to drive, I couldn't drive because I was on so much medication, just high levels of painkillers, just get through the day. Well, and what did that, anything else you want to add to that? Well, okay. The foot had been amputated, and the original break was right into the joint, just a couple of inches up here, and the open wound was over here. Well, they'd taken the plate and the screws out. Before that, and it was about the size of a silver dollar, you could actually look in and see the screw heads and part of the screw. I could just look in my leg and see that, and it was running junk out of it every day. I was on antibiotics. Well, they'd finally taken the plate out. I had an artificial leg, but the break in the infection was still there. When I went down to Dr. Ertl's, we had called, because Jan contacted him, put me on the phone with him, and the secretary said, well, the two brothers doing surgery, but they're doing about 7 to 10 a week. Now, I'm in Butterworth Hospital in Grand Rapids. It was a 8-9 story hospital. I was the only amputee in there. Down at Chicago, it was a little 2-story hospital. It had been an old TB center. They still actually had a wing with about 10 patients that had TB in it. These guys were doing 8 to 10 a week. They were coming from all over, not only the country, gentleman in there from Hawaii once I was there, Florida, California. Gentleman flew in from London, England to have surgery by him. I mean, they were coming from all over the world. So when we called down, the secretary said, you know, we can get you in for an eval, but you're looking at probably 3 months to schedule surgery because they're that far behind. They're already scheduled out that far. I said, look, I'm not interested in more surgery. I'd had 25, 30 by then. Said, not really interested in it, but I want to hear what they've got to say. They've been recommended by this guy. Let's see. So we go down on a Friday again. My mother had to do all the driving. I didn't dare get behind the wheel. Go in. They took a look at it, took x-rays, looked at all the medical, and still spoke broken English. I mean, they were from the old country, you know. And the one did most of the talking that you could understand, and his brother was, yeah, good. That's about all you got out of Big John, you know. And I'm looking at him, and he's 6'4", probably 245, and one of his hands, it'd take 2 of mine to make one of his. And I'm thinking, this guy's a surgeon? And they said, yeah, we kind of share the work. One of us does the major bone work, and then we share the vascular work, and the other's the plastic surgeon. So I'm looking at the smaller brother saying, well, you're the plastic surgeon. No, Big John's a plastic surgeon. He's doing all this fine. Okay. So they took a look at it, and they went out in the hall and talked, and they came back in, and they said, Mr. Park, this was a Friday, you've got to be back here Monday, and we've got to take the rest of that leg off immediately. I'm thinking, okay, explain it to us. They walked us through the whole thing. They said, look, we've seen this hundreds of times. You've got a bone infection. Our concern is it's moving up the leg. It's got to come off right away. I looked at my mother, she looked at me, and I mean, they spent 45 minutes explaining what was going on. I said, look, these are the first guys that took the time. All these other people are having surgery. Something's got to be right here. Went home, packed the bags, went in. Again, about a 7-hour surgery. What they discovered is the reason I was having a lot of the pain, the infection had actually eaten the break apart. It had healed once before. The bones were shifting every time I was walking. The only thing holding it together was the prosthesis. So every time I would step, those bones were shifting. Once they amputated, did the bone bridge, they told us after surgery, 6 months they would have had gone above the knee. They said a year it would have been into your back and ribs and it would have killed you. And, just one of those things that time-wise, it fell in. And, I guess looking back, you've heard there's never an atheist in a foxhole. Well, I don't think there's ever somebody that goes through a major incident that probably doesn't think about the religious aspect. Now, I was raised in a Christian home, had a great upbringing, but got a little wild for a while. And this kind of brought things back around, straightened me out. But looking back now, at the time you're going through some of that stuff, I've spent years and years on crutches, either before surgeries, after, during. And at the time, you're thinking, oh, another surgery or what's going on. And looking back now, I could really see so many positive things. I loved working in the family business, logging, lumbering, but when I got into education, it was really what I wanted to do. I loved it. I'd always coached even when I was working at the sawmill, so that was something I continued but got to expand. But looking back, and I hear that from quite a few of the people we've met, amputees that say, went through a lot of it and thought, why me, or what's going on? I had somebody ask me once, well, did you ever think about ending it all? I said, yeah, I remember one time specific. I was in a cast from August 12th, 1977 until June of 78, so not quite a year. Then I was in a leg brace that had these 2 big rods coming up, a strap under my knee. My leg was just under an inch shorter. I had shoes built up. The ankle didn't work at all. It was the size of a softball. So you're trying to walk, and you got all this going on, and you're just thinking, why me? What's going on? Well, towards the end of that time period of spending 9 months in a cast, I can remember driving home one night, had gone out with some of my friends. You try to get back to what you thought was normal, Coming home, I was still living at my parents'. They had put a hospital bed before that in the living room. I lived in that for 4 or 5 months after the accident. Couldn't get out of that. I remember driving home, and I picked this great big tree out. And I thought, if I just go as fast as I can and hit that, it'll be all over. And I got so close, pulled off, and thought, first, that's pretty selfish. Second, things can't be all that bad. It was just kind of one of those points that started to turn things around. Within a few months, we'd gotten to Lansing, got things going down the right road. So, but you talk to people, and they hit those points because you're thinking, what else? What's next? So, but boy, the teaching, all those things have come through, and it's been great. Probably should have Gordon here explain how we met, because that's also, and it goes into much more detail in the book.
Yeah, I tell Randy, not too much medical stuff, you wear the clothes out of it. But, and this is a quick story, and I'm not going to give you the details because it's in the book, but my wife now, her husband, who was a classmate of mine, passed away, and they couldn't have children, so from the Catholic orphanage, they adopted this little girl several years ago with my stepdaughter Stacy. She's in her middle 30s now. And from day one, my wife always told her that she was adopted, and someday she wanted to meet her adoptive parents, and she did get her
biological.
I'm sorry.
Yep.
He has to correct me.
We do that with each other. It works out good.
Her biological parents, and so she had her name on a website, and finally met her biological mother and found out who her biological father was, and it was going 2 years. Her mother wanted to, said she'd introduce him to it, and it got to the point where my daughter just got disgusted with it and contacted him on her own, and that's Randy.
So I got that letter in the mail every guy kind of dreads. It says, "I hope you're sitting down. I'm your daughter that was adopted."
And the letter is in the book too.
Yeah.
So.
And I'm going, wait, yeah, somebody's having some fun with me, you know, one of my
Well, you
buddies.
didn't even know she existed.
No, I knew it was a possibility, but
Okay.
I had talked to the gal, and she's one of those, "Well, I think I'm pregnant." I said, "Well, you either are or you aren't. If you are, and I'm the dad," and we hadn't dated for 4 months or something when she contacted me. I said, "If you are, then we'll get married." And that was, okay, well, I must not be the dad. Well, once I met my daughter, it was like, no doubt, she's mine, you know. And like I said, she gives me all this information, and we met. Gordon's her adoptive stepdad. It's just been a great connection. She's met my whole family, so her and her grandmother, my mother, are two identical people. She said, "It finally answers a lot of questions for me, Dad." She said, "I can see where I came from and why I act different than other people in her adopted family."
And really, the problems with his leg and stuff are just a really small part of the story. Just the story would have been great had he not even lost his leg. And I try to tell people that, because I say, they don't want to know you went through 80 operations and all this. You know, people, I think anybody with a disability, they're not looking for sympathy or empathy. I think they're looking for some respect, and for you to understand a little bit what they went through. You can't understand because you know that you walk in those footsteps. But I think you know, Randy is every time we go someplace and he sees an amputee, I mean, he's over there. How did it happen? What happened? He gives him a free book, and really that's the important thing, and that's really what we were trying to aim with the book. And I'm just going to go into a quick explanation of my other books, and then we're going to let you sit up and...
Guarantee he does this quick, so...
Yeah. This particular book is the one I start with. Josephine McCallum was the first prison guard that was killed on duty in the state of Michigan. This little boy was about 8 years old, her son. He is a filmmaker now, and a pretty well-known actor in the state of Michigan, and we're making a Randy story in a full-length feature film. This is what the little boy looks like today. We're about halfway through work with the script. He's had Best Feature Film in several film festivals. He's a good actor. We've got the lead actor selected to play Randy's part. We were both in agreement that we needed an actual amputee, not an actor playing an amputee. The gentleman's name is Chris Mosel. He's about 30 years old. At 21 years of age, the same age that Randy was, he was on Sterling Heights, stopped to help a lady, her car was disabled, was getting his tool chest out of the back of his car, and a lady that was drunk hit him 60 miles an hour, pinned his leg against the car. And he's just a go-getter. He runs his own private detective agency. He skateboards. I don't know, I can't think of all the things.
Yeah,
that the
does
guy
it all.
does. He's just a go-getter. So it was a week ago, we had him up to the farm. I've got a farm east of Morley, and had him and his fiance up, and he's just all excited about, ready to grow his hair out to look like the 70s. So
And he has hair. It's great.
we're planning to film a little bit at the end of this year, and most of it in 2014, and then hopefully it'll be out in 2015. So if you hear anything about a full circle movie, and like what this evening, you can only cover a small segment in a movie, so you can't cover a whole book, but we're hopeful it's going to be something that's quite meaningful. So I'm just going to skate through the rest of these, and if you're interested, come over to the table, and if there's anything that strikes your interest, they're all for sale. Bob Blevins lives about outside of Engadine. He's the commander of disabled veterans for the state of Michigan. An old friend of mine, used to be my neighbor, was in the Marines, a Kent County deputy, then he was a sheriff of Lake County, down the Lower Peninsula, very corrupt county. Former Governor Milliken and Ted Nugent both allowed us to use their name in advertising for free. I got some really nice letters from former Governor Milliken on the book. Scars of Soldiers, my first book, I published in '94. Another good friend of mine, Vernon Heppy, was a farm boy in the Ionia area, was drafted in World War II, fought in Kwajalein, Leyte, Okinawa, wounded 4 times, Silver Star, Bronze Star. I had all the letters he sent home to his mother, over 200 of them to review, plus he made some tapes, and we had a lot of get-togethers. a lot of funny stories and a lot of really eye-opening combat over in the islands, being in the infantry. I mean, eye-openers. And you hate to have the younger generation forget what, and I mean, the wars now are not any better, but you hate to have people forget how it was for those people. And it's easy to do. River's changing. Just happens to be a story about my son who canoed the Yellowstone, Missouri, Mississippi River. He's done a lot of other things too.
A lot of the book, though, on Rivers Changing, and although it's about his adventures, it's the people he met, and there are some fantastic stories.
Yeah,
about
it's
people he
a
met.
lot about the people. This year he canoed from Portland, Michigan on the Grand River out to Grand Haven, counterclockwise on Lake Michigan, across the straits in a one-man canoe all by himself, down around the Wisconsin side of Milwaukee. He could only get a month off from work or he'd canoe the whole thing. And then took the ferry back. And he said the scariest thing about the whole trip was riding the ferry back. They'd held it up for 3 days. It was a high-speed ferry. They held it up for 3 days and they finally decided they were going to go. And it was packed with people.
That's the one from Ludington to Manitowoc?
Yeah, well, Manitowoc must, yeah, Ludington, yeah.
Ludington to Manitowoc.
And it was, once they got out in the lake, it was so rough, and this is the fast one, that they had to take it at an angle. The waves were so bad. And when they got to Ludington, everybody was sick, and he said the crew even looked sick. People were demanding their money back, and he said it was bad. He also canoed the whole Mississippi. We dropped him off Minnesota and picked him up in New Orleans. He was the first person to walk the International Appalachian Trail from Cape Gaspé, Quebec to Atlanta. And then I met him. He bought a canoed the Chattahoochee from Atlanta to northern Florida, walked down to Key West, Florida, and the family all met him. The mayor met him, gave him the key to the city, proclaimed it Scott Galloway Day. And he went backpacking and bungee jumping in New Zealand.
See how you missed.
Two bike trips, one from Tucson to Memphis and another one from Grand Rapids to New York City.
Pedal bikes, not motorcycles.
Ted and Mary Aldridge, good friends and neighbors, both half Cherokee. Ted spent a lot of his time in an Episcopal boys' home down in Virginia, kept running away, was a real outdoorsman, ended up being a high power lineman. His last work assignment was with the company that Randy's wife worked for, Heidecker Wheat Lake. The last part of the book about his poetry, and some of the poetry is about the Upper Peninsula and the Ghana area. He was up in that area for quite a while. Not a whole book of poetry, it's a story about his life and his poems. Ken Harder's one of the finest pastors I've ever known, had 50 years at the same church. This little lighthouse, his wife painted the picture. He's actually got a lighthouse across from his house on Long Lake. He does marriage counseling at top. I think he's about 75 or 76 now. He still does well over 100 funerals a year and about half that many weddings. He's a wonderful individual. Come from a very dysfunctional family. His stepdad was an alcoholic, and so were several of his brothers. This is the only book I didn't write. It's about Charlie Deere. We were connected through a mutual friend. I edited it for him and published it. Charlie quit school. We grew up in Pennsylvania, quit school as a sophomore, joined the Navy, ended up as a chief on nuclear submarines. So he was a pretty smart guy. Went up to Alaska, was a bush pilot for several years. Then he developed an Arctic window company, great hunter and fisherman. Just a wonderful individual. So that's my sales spiel.
And I'll just mention real quick, the last two books, The Submarine and Full Circle, are $12 each. All the others are $10. So. And questions?
If I want one later, I can just get a hold of you.
Yeah, in the back of the book you've got, it's got
Okay, I got your card too.
address.
Plus
Yeah.
in the back of
And then you'll just mail it to me. I'll send you
Yes.
money and you mail it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Any questions you have of myself or Gordon?
We don't want to wear you out.
Yeah, and please get up and get some snacks. But anybody have any
Well,
questions?
nice of you to come tonight. We appreciate it.
You know,
We like the Upper Peninsula. We
you
look
know
pretty
Jeff
exclusive out
Pierce?
there.
Oh, yeah.
Are you still living in the Big Rapids area? The two of you?
Yeah, Gordon lives Morley, just south of Big Rapids, and I'm actually a parasite. Paris, Michigan, just north of Big Rapids. Yeah, actually, what's quite interesting, I actually made the team for Ferris in the fall of '74. Went through all 2 days as a freshman. They brought me up and I made the team, was on the first kickoff team. I broke my ankle the week before the first game. Only member of my family to go to college, so of course I did the real intelligent thing. Got on my crutches. The doctor said we can either do surgery, or if you're on crutches for 8 weeks, it'll heal up on its own. You know, it's cracked, fractured. Went home, never withdrew. My mother kept my report card. It was 4 Fs and an A in intercollegiate athletics because the football coach wanted me to go back the next year. The reason I mention that is Jeff was a freshman, the defensive back on the same team. I didn't know him at the time, but after he became the coach there, I got to know him real well. We sent some kids up there.
Jeff
to play
Stewart,
ball. No, Jeff Pierce.
Oh, Pierce.
Ferris,
Pierce,
yeah.
yeah.
Great guy. And Susie, his wife, is in charge of rehab at our local hospital, and she's had me come in a couple of times when she's had amputees come in and talk to them after they've lost their limbs. So yeah, great people. You know where he's at now?
I
or-
saw Jeff today.
Oh, did you?
He
Okay.
stopped at my house. We had a very nice.
Oh,
visit.
he's awesome. Jeff's a great guy.
I graduated high school with his older brother, but I've known Jeff.
Okay, I'll try not to hold that against you. Just kidding. No, they're really fantastic people. And of course, his son came through school when I was teaching, and right at the end. So yeah.
Do you know anything about those legs that fellow that won the Olympics? Do you know anything
The
about
sea legs.
those?
Yes, those are developed just for running.
Oh.
Okay, and they're a spring, so that when you put the force on them, they kind of bend back, but you really can't walk with them. And one thing that was an advantage for that gentleman is it was a birth defect. And one thing that I've discovered in talking to surgeons and prosthetists, that if it's a birth defect, it seems to be the stumps are, I don't know if I want to say more stable, but you don't go through the trauma of an accident or an amputation, and they really adjust quite quickly. And the younger, when I was having surgery in Chicago a couple of times, once there was a 4-year-old boy, lawnmower accident, and you know, I'm laying in bed for 7 days saying, just give me my pain medicine, leave me alone, and trying to let my stump heal up. He had surgery that morning. In the afternoon, he's in my room running around, you know, just, I mean, I don't know why, but they're more resilient. And the older you are, it seems to be more difficult.
Yes, but wouldn't it be part of it? The way they go back in and connect all of
The bones?
the nerves.
The arteries and everything, yeah, nerve endings.
I mean, it's,
Well, with a birth defect, I don't know if they have the same issues. Now, they might, but sometimes when it's born that way, I think the body kind of does it on its own, is what I've been told from some surgeons. Now, sometimes they will have some issues and have to have some work, but it seems to be the end toughens up a lot quicker. It's just, I don't know how to explain it, but they seem to adjust much quicker.
Tell them about Amy Dobbs.
Yeah, there's a gal that goes to a place in Lansing where I get my leg built. She had the Earl Procedure, was diagnosed with cancer, and they took her leg off just below the knee and 3/4 of one lung because the cancer moved up here. Last summer, she's run multiple 50-mile marathons.
records.
She held quite a few
These are
records.
not amputee,
Yeah, just regular.
just regular runners.
And she ran a 100-miler out, starts in Nevada or Utah, goes up through part of the California mountains. Originally, they did it as a horse race years ago, mid-1800s, and somebody said, well, I think we can do it running, but it goes up through the mountains and down through the valleys. She actually had to have a couple of special feet made by this guy that builds mine. He went out and ran, when they get up in the mountains, there's snow. So she had to have a special foot for running in the snow and the hills, and I mean, it's just amazing.
They do that nonstop?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And they have checkpoints. If you don't make it in the minimum time, they pull you off the course because they don't want to take any chances. So, yeah, and you have to get invited. I mean, you have to win some of these other marathons to even get invited to it. I'm sorry, I can't think of the name of it right now, because when I think of 100 miles, I think of a couple of miles. I think I'm going to drive. I don't think about running it, you know, so that's kind of out of my league. But
Yeah, it seems like it'd be almost life-threatening, 100 miles.
oh, yes, you really have to train for it. Other questions?